Awesome. We are live and super excited. We are welcome to the Regeneration series, everyone. This is IManee River, and we're really super excited to bring on not just an amazing guest, but a dear friend on the other side of the world in South Africa, where River and Murry met. And this is going to be an enlightening conversation, to say the least. I think many of you will short circuit. No. So we're super excited to be bringing in this conversation that I think is so relevant at this time, so much of what we talk about. And this is truly going to be about the age of synthesis and how we are showing up in the world at this most perfect time. So maybe, River, you can share a little bit about how you and Murry met. It's going to be hard to keep this to an hour. We'll have Murry on again, just saying that in the front end. And if any of you are looking to get the replay of this, you can find it on our partner station at earthheroestv.com. It's on the Haven Earth YouTube channel. So if you're watching there, let us know. And as well as my Facebook page, because I'm still able to get on that page. So
congratulations.
Thanks.
Morning. This is Mr. Murry. He's a dear friend that I connected with in 2018. Mr. Murry has been a continuous part of my life, in and out, for the last couple of years since we met.
And have visions about hemp.
Yeah, and kind of has helped me a lot in his guidance, and just his, being on the journey of self-exploration for so long. To be able to reflect and really be that mirror for me on my journey. And we met in 2018 at a natural building workshop, and we're just in love with hemp, and our love for hemp has just really kept us weaving in and out of each other's lives. And
and actually one of the reasons that we thought it would be so relevant to bring Murry on was from that connection that you had and seeing like the bigger picture of what the work that you're doing in the world, Murry, and how it relates to the work that we're doing, kind of building out that new earth. And so much, syntropy is a big word for us, and you use that word a lot. And we're really going to dive into these kind of syntropic activations, is what you kind of coined them. And I just want to, River was kind of new to human design and gene keys. And when he introduced us and Murry told me about that, I was like, oh yes, we speak the same language. And I was just seeing like the bigger picture of how it relates basically to everything that we're doing right now on the planet. So I know there's certain gene key activations, but we had a long conversation with you yesterday about, well, every time we talk to you, we have a long conversation about what's going on. So it was like, there was so much that came through in that. So I just want to open up to you because I know that you could talk for hours. We did a session with you and that was like 4.5 hours.
Or maybe we could talk just a little bit about our session.
I don't know. I think we could do that another one. I want people to meet Murry. So Murry.
No, in the sense that we got a session with Murry a few weeks ago, and since then it's helped us really reflect on our relationship and what's going on in the world
and what we're here to do.
Yeah, in terms of how we're set up and what our makeup is, and I think. And
we've been synthesizing ever since.
Yeah, really processing it and reflecting. It's been beautiful, actually. Yeah, what is it that is so relevant about it now at this time, Murry?
Sure. Where to begin? What's so relevant about all that's happening is that all that's happening is reflecting the niche that we're entering. And coming of a new age is we're becoming a new species. We're becoming new beings. And Earth is a mutation parlor. Not just any mutation parlor, but like the mutation parlor. And not to say transformation going on elsewhere, but focused here. And from what we realize, the technology that we have is very underdeveloped. And the gene keys and the age of synthesis that we're entering is very much about becoming a new being through beginning to communicate and create in ways. So it's a new language, a new operating system, an operating system of virtues. And the Synarky, which is the gathering of these a tribe, if you will, or it's how this syntropic universe shows up in a way that has come to say, hey, this is the first expression of us coming into the age of synthesis. And we've been in the age of this, we've been in the screen age. We had the Stone Age and the Screen Age. So we've been really caught in the miasm of reflection and projection and division and hierarchy. Division based on hierarchy. And there are hierarchies which pretty much run the planet. I wouldn't say control the planet, because that's a big word, and we're not. We're coming into freedom, and this new language we're caterpillars and we're learning to speak butterfly. Or if the Gene Keys we're nymphs, we're these underwater creatures, and we're rising for the first time up a stick or up a reed. The light is hitting our consciousness, and the Synarky is this collective awareness of the deep syntropic nature of synthesis, of togetherness, of co-rulership, of co-leadership, of doing this together. And so we're moving from the authoritarian, and we're beginning to discover a new leadership based on synthesis, and a leadership based on not control, but freedom. And Synarky is true freedom. And synthesis it's a process by which everything is coming to recognize itself, realize the holographic nature of the universe we live in as non-separate, as unified, as Synarky. And so Syn means to come together and to act upon together, and archy means to govern. So it's a whole new kind of co-rulership that's coming through. And this co-rulership is what is required. In my own journey here in South Africa, I'm connecting with many people who are wanting to get off grid, or getting rid of the city and getting onto the off-grid consciousness. But to be truly off-grid is to Synarky within, and to radiate that wherever you are, to transform the environment, which is essentially what we've come to do. We've come to transform our physical environment. And the Synarky is the principle, or the collective principle of intelligence that naturally aligns itself in perfect harmony with everything else. And so this is what a Synarky is. And Synarky, not even a or the, but Synarky itself as a concept, is where these syntropic values and these virtuous ways begin to come together in teamwork and move out of hierarchy and move into heterarchy, which is where we move from the mind-controlled, logical-based universe of limitation, and we're stepping into a much greater space of the heart, where we're allowing, instead of controlling through leadership or rulership, heterarchies is different, unique. And Synarky means together. So let's act upon our uniqueness together. Has a gift, unique gift, and the Gene Keys point to these gifts within us. So does the human design. So does every system that's come along. But I love the Gene Keys, and even the human design, where it came from and out of, and where it mutated out of, is that it's all about mutation. These systems are about mutation. They're about synthesis, and change is mutation, and we fear change. So we're locked into this wanting and needing change.
I want to dive into the mutation part. And then I just realized that maybe some people don't even know about human design and Gene Keys. This might be their first introduction. So we kind of went right in because we were so excited. But maybe, and I know that your interpretation and how you use them in the sessions that you do is unique. It's not maybe just you. I would say you go beyond Gene Keys. So just let's start there, and then I want to dive into the mutation. I also want to talk about trust, because that was a big part of our conversation yesterday. But how would you contextualize the Gene Keys to what's relevant to the times, just to give people who are really new here an understanding of
the Gene Keys itself? Well, the Gene Keys it relates to, well, it's made up of a bunch of words. Initially, the books and the profile and the chart that you get. You go online, you get a chart for free. It's a profile. It has a whole geometry to it, which has functions. And these 64 codes of creation, which are what the Gene Keys are made of, which was originally discovered or created through the I Ching, the changes from China and from the Chinese, from the Tao. And so this information took thousands of years to develop and practice and refine through civilizations coming and going. And so Gene Keys is based on these cycles of change and how to live in the face of change, in the face of mutation. So these 64 codes run through this matrix of 3 sequences, which we really do. It's a space of non-interference based on Synarky is about non-interference. So we approach things through not needing to change them, but allowing them to be as they are. And this is where the mutation comes in, because we're constantly under mutation. We're constantly undergoing mutations within our bodies, within our minds, within our collective. Very stuck in many ways, smaller mutations, going a massive mutation now, kind of 1987 and 2027, where we moved from harmonic convergence into a symphony in 2027 is what it's spoken of as a divine symphony, a cosmic symphony, where everything comes into alignment and harmony through these codes, or these story codes of creation, is what we've been given as the Gene Keys and as the human design. So they really are tools at an individual level to be able to work through where we're holding ourselves in conscious mutation, the shadow consciousness. And so it speaks of, we live in a shadow consciousness. It's a quantum field, and we're being invited to explore this, not resist it, and go deeply in and be gentle with ourselves and go through contemplation. And contemplation is this process of really pausing, and instead of trying to change things through and interfering with them, we just observe the interference pattern. And so that allows us to unlock our shadow. And we have all these shadows in different configurations, which are really gifts waiting to flower. And so these shadows, as you explore them through contemplation and you allow them to reflect back in your life through these keys, these codes, they unlock within you. And so we're unlocking through perception. And it's all about perception. And so language is a big part of that. And so we live in a worldwide web of words, and the Gene Keys are a way to navigate that worldwide web of words without becoming too masculine about it, too lineated about it, the human design is more that side of things. And it's beautiful. It's more masculine. It's more geometric. It's more dualistic. Whereas the Gene Keys is based on Trinity. It's all about a spectrum of move from a shadow consciousness as a seed, and breaking open that seed and flowering. And then from that flowering, we step into this gift consciousness of heart, which allows us to begin to navigate together. So it's all about the Synarky and us waking up within the Synarky as these synarchists, if you will, as these naturalists, as these creations and creators within our own creation. And we begin to reflect upon that together, and then realize, well, the Synarky, what is the Synarky? It's, well, when we come into syntropy with ourselves, we begin to attract IManee, we begin to attract River. That was all part of a human fractal consciousness, which is unfolding based on our vibratory signatures. And your vibratory signature, you can check in with where you're at through the Gene Keys. And so it's really a mirror. And you take a key and you mirror it and go, well, where at with this? Yes.
Murray, what I hear you saying, and I love that comparison that, human design, Gene Keys sort of evolved out of that. This is all kind of evolutionary, and that when you say too, it's the focus sort of on ourselves, but Gene Keys is more learning about ourselves, but really more about the collective and the bigger picture of where we all are in this together as a global family, all of humanity.
Well, underpinning the entire work of the Gene Keys is 64 codes which mirror each other, but the 44th Gene Key is a code known at its highest frequency as Synarky. And so it points to so this is where it gets interesting. There is Synarky, and there is the Synarky. There is synthesis, and there is the synthesis, and these are different. So it's what one embodies and becomes. So this Synarky is how we're all showing up as the remembrance that our underlying nature is Synarky, which means to rule together. Our body is pure mirror of Synarky. Without Synarky, our body would not be what it is. And yet it also incorporates hierarchy. So at the shadow level, we've been operating in vision based on hierarchy. And so what we're beginning to realize is that if we move into the higher octaves of hierarchy, because hierarchy comes from the word hierarch, which means sacred, sacred rulership, sacred leadership, we just got a little convoluted, but now we're refinding out what that means, because life exists with heterarchies and hierarchies, all within a great synarchy. So there is systems within systems, and fractals and holographic universes within. And they're all mirroring that out in each human being, in each cell in each human being. There is the conductor for the entire symphony. In each cell, there is the two universes. We are coded with all that is. We are the most ancient and futuristic artifact available. And we're the next part of evolution to be developed. With all the other sides, we're kind of getting a bit bored with it. That's why people are losing their story, because even technology is not as exciting as it used to be. Because what is it? I'm the most exciting toy I know, for sure. Like, and the more I realize that through this, it's like, oh, we've come to play. And at the shadow of interference of the 44th gene key, this interference pattern stops us from living in the heart and creating teams. And these teams begin to come together as orchestras. And those orchestras there's a conductor, and each conductor is the same conductor within every being who's within the orchestra. And we're finding our place in our orchestra. And then we're beginning to realize, oh, we're part of a bigger symphony of orchestras. And so this is the awakening through purpose, through what is it to be synthesized, or to have a synthetic mind. A modern mind is a synthesis of all systems. We no longer can just have one affiliation anymore. There's too much going on. So the gene keys is a great way, and I've found, and for many others who come to it, it's entertainment, it's education about where we come from, where we could be going, and it's an exploration into who we're becoming and what story we wanted to speak about, story we want to tell, and then through that, really our stories are us coming together and sharing the goodness of who we are, which is like lighting a fire, and we all come and put some wood on. And as each one puts its story or our story in and our connection, we begin to listen and feel the fellowship grows. And we can take off our winter rugs, and we can begin to warm up, and our hearts open, and we can begin to then really communicate with each other. So the gene keys are really important, so we can all kind of get in the same page, if you will, a similar chapter of heart. And then from there, we know everything is already done. Everything is already perfect. And we only act out of joy, out of causeless joy, and everything else is it has less meaning, because the meaning is already what it is, and we can't change that. We can highlight it, we can guide it. But if we're doing that, and this is why I say the gene keys, because it all comes back to rulership or leadership. What is a community, and what is a highly evolved community other than a synarchy? But how does it operate? And you get different kinds of leaders, and over time we've had a very authoritarian leadership, which is just like, do this, go do that, and telling people what to do. But a new leadership is emerging out of the hierarchy, which is us beginning to recognize our difference, and through the heart-based cooperation, integrate with each other and recognize each other's gifts while we're busy recognizing our own and being able to see the gifts in others. And the gene keys really are all about gifts that then become superpowers. So it's at the shadow level. It's kind of the dog eat dog of karma and dharma and all that's terrible about our world. But actually, within that terribleness, there are great gifts waiting to emerge if we just move beyond our need to judge it all. And then, so this is what the mutation is. It's basically saying to us, if we can not judge the mutation, or if we can begin to find out where we're afraid of the mutation. And gene keys helps us find out where we're afraid.
Can I interject there for a minute, Murry? Because you just said that. No, that's great. The fear of mutation, this lineage of fear of mutation, because even just when you say this is, the world of words, that the word mutation makes me feel a little uncomfortable, and that we're being mutated, right? Because there's so much fear right now of what's going on in the world, and how do we get comfortable with this idea around we're talking gene keys and this coding, right? And there's so much relevant to this topic in so many different ways that the fear gets in the way of us kind of evolving. So maybe speak to this. I know you kind of
Yes.
touched on this mutation and you said we're mutating, but how do we address our fear of mutating and becoming this new species?
Well, firstly, it's to embrace, for my own particular journey, fear of death. You know, like we address it as many things which lead us to the fear of death, which is actually ultimately the fear of not living or not having lived, or the fear of dying. But underneath all of that, there's a fear that there is no underlying structure or order to the universe. Massive unconscious fear. It doesn't even really have. It's just there. It's an entropy. And this entry is what pulls us down into the shadow consciousness and keeps us down in the shadow. But like a flower that's pushing up through the pavement, we're the flower, and we're going to realize we're not victims, and we have the power, no matter what it is, to break through this force field of shadow. And it's our fear of mutation that stops us from jutting out and breaking through the atmosphere of this lower frequency consciousness, which isn't all bad. It's just there are. And if we realize that, then we realize we're a bunch of mutations, but mutation, and we've only ever mutated. And so we're afraid of really what we are. We're afraid of our own power. We're afraid of freedom because we're not used to it. And it's a nice idea, and we taste it here and there, but generally we're only just waking up to the fact that we're victims. And I don't say this in a way to insult myself or anybody else. It's I still have to look daily within myself to see where am I playing victim. Where is my perception still agreeing upon there is something lacking in reality at all? And so it goes to very high levels, you know, and at the gift level, it's designed to bring us all together so that we can operate from the heart and then use these brilliant minds and imaginations to be the imagination of creation. To become a new consciousness, we have to create from anew, and we're beginning to see we've been only living old hierarchical ways. And heterarchy has come through this process of the gene keys, and not just the gene keys. People are waking up to this gene keys. This is mutation. This is happening at a level of our DNA, and all it requires is openness and an exploration into what we've assumed to be who we think we are, or what is. And so as we do that, we begin to explore the shadow space, which continually serves us. And then our shadows become our friends. I realized there was only one demon, the demon of the illusion of a separate self. And so Gene Keys is all about breaking through this illusion of holding ourselves in the mind's limited eye of mutation, of separation, of division. And this is a new language based on Trinity, not based on dualities, not based on right or wrong, not based on less than in any way. It's tackling indifference head on so that we can become masters of our own space. And that starts out with focusing on the master within us. But we can only do that by focusing on what we're feeling and where we feel not like a master. We feel a bit like a disaster. You know, and we're turning this magic, this magic from tragic into a funfair beyond the unfair. And so it's this dualistic play that we're moving to and beyond. And Gene Keys is the greatest way to assist us in realizing and giving us context where we're suffering. And being radically self-honest with ourselves to the point where we can realize how harsh we are with ourselves in the process. And this is why I say Gene Keys is amazing, because we're all our worst critics. And how better way to cover than to share that, to share our negativity in a way that from a higher space where we can hold space for each other. So we don't punt each other. So we're allowed to share it. And this is what I love about the podcast that you're doing. With Brave New Life, it's all about, it's very Gene Keys, I've got to say. And not just Gene Keys, synthesis. Fractals of consciousness coming together in a syntropic way to create a synthesized world, and not in this, the plastic, but nature herself is the highest form of synthesis, and synarchy, and syntropy, and synchronicity, and she's pure synergy on top of it all. This is how it operates. And so this is the language used to realizing, okay, these words actually activate themselves within our DNA, because the Gene Keys is built on DNA, chromosomes, and how it works with language. And it's saying that all language, all alphabets, all geometry comes out of the cosmometry, the cosmometry of light itself that steps down into form as imagination, and then over time develops through us as languages, so that we can begin to understand each other, so we can begin to get together, so we can actually commune. And communication. And so it's all about communication. And what is communication other than creation? As you're communicating, you're creating. Sound is the vibration which emanates into form. And so doing this in groups, we are the Synarky. And so people coming together to realize, well, I'm not that fucked up. Well, I have been. Well, I thought I was. But now this is showing me that we all have this within us. We all have these shadows. And if we could actually just forgive ourselves enough to be able to open this journey, or begin this journey of exploring where we haven't been able to appreciate ourselves. And this is essentially what the gene keys are. And this brings the gene keys together, or people in the use of the gene keys and beyond, in all ways possible, because the gene keys, again, is a synthesis from all systems. So it's really happening. And an intelligence, and it's our underlying nature. And as we work through the shadow consciousness, as we work through that in ourselves, which is really more of a play, a dance, with each other and ourselves, we begin to become the Synarky. The age of synthesis has begun, and this is happening around the planet. So we already are in the age of synthesis. We just haven't realized it yet.
Murry, I and you could keep going and really open this up in a huge way, but we do have some limited time. So I really wanted to ask you, because for me, my experience, and for us, I think our experience of having a session with you and really diving deeper into our makeup in both the human design and the gene keys, how that relates to us relating together on our life path, how we support each other on our life missions. How do you see, like, in a practical way, that this can support people right now, because it really gives this amazing opportunity to see, now I see why I'm doing that. Now I see why I do that in my life, because I have this shadow element, or I'm blocked in this area, but I'm open in this area, and all these kind of clues to how we operate. For me, it's massive, because I come from a culture in England. You don't get it. I mean, especially in Newcastle, you don't get into this kind of stuff. You don't even talk about your feelings or something,
The Scousers.
So yeah. Geordies, actually. But
Sorry.
You had to said that to me 20 years ago, I might have got in an argument with you about that. But really, like, how profound it is to be able to see that, get them clues from somewhere else as to who we are. I mean, that's kind of amazing for me. Like, how do you see this really helping people in this time of transition? What is it at a practical level that people can tune into with these kind of readings and stuff?
And actually, Murry, because this is your first time that we're kind of bringing you out to the world. There's a birthing happening here, and I quickly made a little landing page, because Murray's just he's letting go of the old technology and he's coming into himself. So I created a little landing page for anyone that is interested in connecting with you, and a session, which I highly recommend. So I'll put that in the feed, and at some point there will be a little bit more organization around that. But just, to answer River's question, how do you see that benefit for people during this time? We experienced it firsthand, but just for you to share a little bit about that.
It's really a part of knowing knowing yourself, so that you can get to know each other. So the more you know yourself, the less you need to know another, and the less you need to know another, the more you're able to appreciate the other. So the more you can trust yourself, the more you can be yourself, and the more you can be yourself, the more you can love yourself. The more you're loving yourself, the more you radiate and resonate and model that in the reality, whether it's through communication or just through way. And so this imbibes the whole morphogenetic field, just from your own, the beauty of your own appreciation of consciousness. and your ability to go there. And so it's very useful in this way for the individual. And so instead of looking out there for the problem, we're addressing it here. Not that there is a problem, but as long as we think we do, we might as well look. And this human design is very good for that in terms of everyday decision making. If you've got kids, especially, because they're unique, nothing like them. And human design shows the uniqueness on the blueprint of your child. So it's like, here's a manual. Some people might be insinuated or insulted by that, but for me, it was hugely valuable to come to it at an age in my life where I was like, wow, people go to psychologists for 20 years. You can unwrap that in a session in the Gene Keys or the human design or both. So the human design, very good if you're a man, more men interested in the human design and more women interested in the Gene Keys. Not to limit it, but generally that's what I've seen. So Gene Keys is a very yin system. It's based on non-interference and contemplation, whereas the human design is based on more technicality, more geometry, more this and that, and how to get a fay with this and that within yourself, so that you can make decisions from your body, not your mind, because your mind has been making decisions for you based on the conditioning or the openness in your body that filters the conditioning of the collective. So we're these filters for consciousness. And so it comes into us, it changes, transforms, and goes out. But with it comes a whole lot of programming from the environment. Human design is getting to know where you're taking in these conditionings and how to operate in a way from not the mind, but from the place of listening to the body, whether it's the emotions, the intuition, the gut. We all have different ways and different inner authorities. So human design is about coming to your inner authority so you can make decisions in the world, so you can feel better as yourself, you can trust yourself, you can be more loving in all your interactions, and your world then is more and more part of this interaction where you realize you're doing this, you are creating this. This is a more rudimentary approach, I found. The Gene Keys is way more mystical, although initially it wasn't designed to be a mystical document. It's just the nature of intelligence. So the human design is a bit more science.
I was going to say,
Gene Keys is poetry.
I love that because, I'd come across it probably, I don't even know if it was a decade ago, and I've had the book and I dived into it and then I've just circled around. But I love that you talk about it being mystical, because that was sort of my experience. I'm not really aligned with any kind of religious organization throughout my life, but I was telling everyone, like, this is like the new Bible. Like, this is like the blueprint for humanity. And it just said,
you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So you mentioned
it's you are, and you are the universal religion. My apologies.
No, I know there's a little delay, so we're catching up with each other and aligning. But yesterday we talked about trust a lot, and you brought it up again, and that was a big piece for River and I that we uncovered this week as far as going deeper into trust. And I think you said something like, I don't know if I can even I think you said trusting yourself is love.
Yes. Yeah. Because when you're trusting yourself, you're trusting everything. And then you're in love, because there is only love. And the absence of love appears as a kind of a mistrust. And trust is embodied. And trust is not a mental thing. It's something that's got to be felt deeply in the cells of the body. That's where true trust exists. And we're cultivating this. And the Gene Keys helps us do this more so from a spiritual perspective, because we're using it not just to navigate in the world, but to navigate our inner world. It's more of an inner landscape thing. And through the yin process of really finding out where we're rubbing up against ourselves in reality. And instead of looking again out, the keys just provide us a perfect opportunity to explore within, which simultaneously activates your DNA. Which then begins to reflect in your reality back and forward. So your thoughts are pebbles, and your mind is this cool lake, this calm lake. And when you're throwing the pebbles in, they're all about choices. And the Gene Keys allows us to see where our choices are lower free. We're choosing still lower patterning and replicating that, thinking we're going to change. it's all about change, and it's sometimes uncomfortable. And moving into the gift is very uncomfortable. The shadow is actually quite comfortable because we've been there so long, even recognize it most of the time. And when you realize it and you recognize it, you're like, oh, wow, there's so much to work with here. And then you start transforming yourself, and then you come into the gift space, which allows you to work with others and see the transformation happening in the world, so you don't help so personally, so you can trust yourself more in the process. And so Gene Keys is allowing, through these codes and these words, and some, the divine feminine have even said to me, like, why the words? Why do we need the words? I'm like, well, we don't. But we've got a bunch of words in our minds already. And we're very unconscious of all of that. And we've taken on most of it in our unconscious. So what you unconsciously do, you don't consciously know. And what you consciously think you believe, you unconsciously don't most of the time. And so you can use hypnosis, you can use psychology, kinesiology to unlock these belief systems. Or you can just raise your frequency altogether and not have to do any of it. But none of us are there. I'm like, admit have language and word. Gene Keys are great for us to use number and word to transcend number and language altogether in that way. And the old language. Yeah. So it's built to transcend itself. It's a self-organizing principle, like the universe.
Well, with Through Brave New Life and the conversations that we've had, which were all based on syntropy and feeling-based relating, my experience was that we were rewriting the program. It was a new language, and I call it like a love language, right? And that's the experience I have, that when we use those words and the way that you're speaking through this language of the Gene Keys and everything else that you've done to get there, it is enabling us to cancel out the unconscious programming that's happening all the time that we aren't, that we're not aware of, right? So I think it is essential. It's like that point in between. Maybe we'll reach that point where the words aren't necessary. But you brought up freedom several times, and I love that we're these synarchists, like this is where we're going. And a lot of people are saying they want freedom, and then, but it's one thing to say, like, this is what we want, or this is what we're, moving towards. But if we have this programming, if we have these unconscious things operating and we don't remove those blocks or that resistance, even if we're not even able to recognize that it's there, we can't achieve that. We can't even receive the gifts, right, that the universe is offering, that to remembering that this is all within us. But we've forgotten, right? You said something else yesterday that was really profound about the remembering. I think you said, awakening is remembering and remembering is forgetting.
Yeah, it's forgetting who we were, which is who we aren't. Whether it was good or bad, it's like we're becoming. we're already whole and beautiful and perfect and complete. And so, we're never complete, but we're perfect. But we're always continually becoming and refining and honing, and lifetimes of this is this reincarnation process. And if you don't believe in reincarnation, just look at this life and see how you reincarnate every day. It's the same fractal. We can't get rid of it. We can't get away from it. We might as well just get better at playing with it and playing with each other. And so this way shower consciousness is what the Gene Keys is. It's a way shower consciousness, and it's there for the way showers, for core fractal holders, for the Synarky, who are those who are showing up to live in.
Talk about the core fractal holders a little bit, and why some people would be attracted to the Gene Keys in this language?
Well, it's very well. It's all about virtue, and all the 64 keys are 64 virtues at their highest level. And this is a new kind of leadership which is coming into being. So it's very exciting to realize that, we can play together in a way that's fun. And we haven't kind of gotten used to that. And so we're coming into this process of finding our playmates, and this core fractal business and the human fractal business is really to understand Synarky is to actually understand more deeply, which can't be covered in a session, what human fractals are and how we coalesce through vibration and frequency to our fractal. and how each one of us is fractals, and there are fractal arms which are aligning. And I mean, it's in the Bible, 144,000. These are the fractals. These are the core seed fractals, and each has lineages and connections to beyond what we remember. So, and it's all about purpose and bringing us together through this fractal consciousness. And fractal is a self-repeating or replicating pattern throughout to the end of time. And so these patterns are unfolding, and we're beginning to coalesce and align and come into alignment with the rest of the symphony of our fractal, if you will, the orchestra of our fractal, which is aligning with other fractals in a bigger symphony. And as this happens, we're finding a melody. Humanity's coming into melody. It was in discord. Like, no one listening to each other, and all the instruments just going crazy, and the conductor's like pulling his hair out. That's us. We're the conductor. And in each cell there's a conductor, and it's waiting for us to break through shadows so that we can actually create awesome music together, play. And then we put down the instruments and we fly away in the cities. In a sense, we no longer need that which got us this far. It was a boat, but like Buddha said, like, you'll be surprised at how many people attached to the boat and don't get the realization. So Gene Keys is designed to transcend itself. It's designed, the Synarky is designed to eventually transcend the need for anything. The word need will fall away. Whole languages are going to fall away, because if we keep using them, we keep focusing on them. And if we keep focusing on, we keep attracting what we focus on. And it brings us back to, and the Gene Keys is also really underpinned by this whole consciousness of coming to the realization that everything is kind of an interwoven fractal, and we're the eyes of that fractal. We're the consciousness. We're that which is observing it all. As we come into that play, we forgive ourselves. And Gene Keys is hugely about self-forgiveness from Christ things. It has a way of then us being more easy with ourselves in the world. And I thought I dealt with forgiveness until my mother died recently, as you know, and she didn't die, she passed away. And I've just been going through the most incredible journey through the Gene Keys, but also deeply prompted by this need to free myself of where I still haven't, and it's judgment. And so Gene Keys really helps us to be less judgmental of ourselves. That's it.
Which
it just shows us where we're judging ourselves. And when we realize that, and when we're okay with that, and we make love to that, now we're making room for all our children, because our shadows are our children. We've got to make room for them and feed them the right information, the right nutrition. And so everything's mirrored in everything anyway. And so Gene Keys is this really amazing approach. And it's not even the Gene Keys. That's a word that points to a transmission which is beyond words. These are merely pointers, and the Gene Keys won't tell you what to do, where to go. It allows you and helps you to dig deeper into where you haven't loved yourself, and to set free those things which come with superpowers, and those super eventually are designed to help us transcend the limited identity of self. Because ultimately that's where all our suffering is coming from, the limited identity of self. And without mutation and change, we would be locked in hell forever. In fact, we would never have come to this place in the first place. Without mutation, nothing could ever happen. It just couldn't. It's not possible. So we're learning to make love to mutation, and the age that we're in is the age of mutation. And we live in a mutation parlor, and the Gene Keys is synthesis. An ancient wisdom, a future wisdom that is there for us to reflect upon how to raise our frequency and make love to the frequency that we're at, so that it raises, as opposed to, again, needing to do spirituality in a way that takes a gun to our head and in the back wondering if we're getting it right or not. And it becomes as all like, oh, what are they doing? What am I? Well, and it's just your own journey. And what's beautiful about it is it's really useful in relationships, because the action is that you focus on your partner's gifts, and you focus on your shadows. So you hold space for each other from gift space that you can deal with your own stuff together. Yeah. And then the human design is still a bit different.
Right. It's been incredible, Murray. And I'm so grateful that I found such a good playmate, because you said the idea of this being fun and playing with this, and even bringing the children in. I mean, as a mother of many, I've used a lot of different tools to just try to get insight to, you know, who my children are, recognize them each as unique beings. And, you know, I think these tools help us in allowing their expression without us projecting onto them, even though we do it anyway, but to the best of our abilities. So, you know, that becomes challenging. But then in relationship, the same thing happens. And with River and I coming together, you know, just in this last year, I think at the most divinely orchestrated time, it's just that thing, that the piece that you said about, there's so much around, I mean, the trust and the judgment, you know, because it is about that judgment of ourselves. Because when we're not judging ourselves, then we, you know, aren't judgmental of others. And that's just been a, you know, a thing that we've been working with and playing with quite a bit. Right.
Yeah. Which ultimately, I mean, and this is the core of judgment, is our bodies are we're these liquid beings, and the molecules of emotion in our bodies respond, they cringe to us judging anything, an animal, a situation, the past, people, and our heart doesn't know the difference, because it's not mind. It has no duality of separation. So the heart thinks you're judging you. And so it really is, it's the best thing to learn. And it's not even something so much you just learn and you get it. It's something you practice until it's every day, every moment. In every moment, we're aware of where our perception is going. Is it going to a place that is like wearing a crown of thorns, and each one of those thorns is negativity punching into the mind, and that's what we vomit out? Or is it from a place of heart? Are we coming from the frequency of heart? And that alone is what the gene keys does. You don't need the gene keys. You don't need anything. But there's a lot going on. It's like we don't need supplement, and we don't really need anything. But hey, there's a lot of toxicity in the world, so it's useful.
Well, that's it. And I think the discussion we had yesterday, just impromptu, you know, out of the blue, and kind of what I was going through in my own way with doubt, with having doubt come up in me in some way, with, you know, relative to what I'm doing in my life, right? Especially now in this time. And how, like, through us communicating yesterday, I could see that the doubt was actually the gift, because it allowed that introspection, it allowed that observation, it allowed that deeper process to engage. And I think that what in the past I did was I had doubts, but I kept them inside because I didn't trust myself. But now I'm trusting myself more. I bring the doubt out and I share that, and that can create some kind of, you know, friction, because all of a sudden you've got a doubt about something and that you didn't before. Like, why are you changing your mind? And it's like, and as somewhat allowing ourselves to have these things come up, but having the tools to understand why they are there, I think was really my realization, that, like, it's really serving it's serving a function and a purpose. But if I ignore it, or if I dive so deep into it, I kind of lose the point of it, actually, and get consumed by something else. And you said that was kind of like the epitome of the gene keys or something like that. That, you know, like transmuting that shadow side. Synarky, yeah. I just wanted to put that as kind of the last thing of my input, because it was quite profound to have that realization. You were kind of holding the space for it as you do, which was really beautiful. And just how
we appreciate you so much, Murry.
Yeah,
we're glad you're in our relationship. We're the trilogy, because it's really beautiful to have the reflection.
Power of three.
Yeah, definitely. Can you speak to that a little bit about the doubt and about these kind of things that we might want to push aside and not see how they're useful?
Yes. Well, entropy, synthesis, Synarky, it's all self-organizing principle. the universe coming to a realization of its oneness, its uniqueness, its fractal interwovenness. So being self-regulating and self-organizing, even the shadow is self-organizing. Syntropy exists there in the shadow. That's what it's doing. The shadow's already there. It's got a function. And when you realize it's actually got a function, it's not just a way. Oh, wow, it's telling me something. Oh, it's like my immune system. And this is where the gene keys are very much like an immune system for our consciousness. They point out what's going on. And so you can go there and you can, through the process, inquire. Where there's doubt, there's inquiry naturally. If you're honest with yourself, if you're willing, if you're courageous, which you are. And most people listening to this are those people. They otherwise would be here. So it's this courageousness to inquire into what it is. And when you inquire into the truth of anything, you come to see what you believe about it and what patterns you've gathered around it. And then you can see for yourself whether it makes sense or not. Does it cognize? And if it doesn't, well, you can no longer believe it. And if you no longer believe it, you shifted belief, which means you've just shifted, you've just mutated, and then your whole fractal and your whole consciousness begins to you become into homeostasis around that change. So the purpose of the shadow is to gift you. When you realize that, wow. And I can't get enough of my shadow. It's awesome. I dance with my shadow. I love my shadow. And where I haven't loved my shadow, it shows me. And then I have to parent myself. And so it's the self-exploration is really like, how do you, while you're exploring the mysterious unknown, how do you look after yourself? Through a logical closed circuit thinking or through a mystical archetypal journey that you're on? And it's just a choice. And so this is what a lot of this doubt is asking us to do. Is like, oh, well, is there something lacking, or are you on an adventure? And it's all cool. You know, because this is what we are. We're adventurers. We're explorers of the unknown. That's why we came to the planet to do this in body. We are not these space suits, these water suits. Some people call them meat suits. But it's not limited to the most amazing things, and they're full of gifts. And if we just started loving them more through the process of embracing doubt and embracing shadow and embracing all the discomforts, then we begin to more and more awaken to this greater realization that everything's happening for us and that nothing is actually out of place. And even the idea that there is a shadow is not out of place, because if that's a judgment. So if we're coming back to loving our shadows, and this is what the Gene Keys provides, like our system, and I explored all the systems and let go of all of them. And then after years of just being myself, the Gene Keys came. And so it was natural to me, and I could see that, this isn't telling me something I don't know. This is just reminding me of what I do know. And I've just been in a limited mind's eye based on not feeling worthy, not loving myself, and not acting upon and expressing the depth and unique own creative vision as a human, and as a syntropic human, as a synarchist, as an imagineer, as an envisioneer. And this is all of us, we're all these creators within our own creation. And we've been victimized by ourselves. But if you realize that no one crucified you but you, and you're on the cross, you're carrying the cross, and there's a vertical axis of infinity, and there's a horizontal axis of experience, of creation, there's divine mystery, and then there's creation. This is where we're at, and this is what's unfolding through this whole process. So this really is a creation story, and each one of us is like the guru or the god or this enlightened being within the story. And each one of us is that, and no one is excluded. And so this first wave is what's happening. We're the first wave. And what we're doing is we don't have to wake everybody up. That would be judgment. What we're doing is we're creating the world we want to create because it's just a great idea. And while we're doing it, we have less of nothing holding us back, because there can be no doubt, and there's more trust that comes into the process. And then we begin to co-create together more and more and more shared reality. And we live in a shared reality, and we're just starting to realize that the whole reality is underpinned by fear. Economies, it's all underpinned by the bent arrow of fear that will never find its true target of love, of a true divine, ancestral, and spiritual accomplishment, which we've been at for eons. And each one of us on this earth is uniquely, profoundly special in a way, and in a unique way, and that can't be even compared to each other. And it's the science of this differentiation, which is really freedom.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just as you were saying this, I'm very image based. I get images in my head, really. And when I draw my images for clients, for projects of landscapes, of with houses and buildings and stuff, it's only when I add the shadows to the drawing that it actually comes to life. It's only when I define that it breathes life into it. And it was like, wow, that's so true. How it when it's all light,
contrast,
there's no definition, right? There's no way to see where something stands out. And I think the shadow is allowing us to see what's standing out for us. So we can see it and feel it and then honor that. It's really interesting for me, Murry. I'm not going to start diving into my shadow like you maybe, but
it's so luxurious. So luxurious.
Murry, I mean, there's so many great comments and people falling in love with you and themselves in this conversation. And I think everyone that's here listening to this is hearing exactly what they needed to hear. And me listening and just being in this conversation just brings, not just hope, but this sense of relaxed, like trust, really. I guess that's what it is, like trust, because even just so many of the things that you're speaking to are, the challenges that people are feeling, like that they have to wake other people up. We have to do this. They're like, how do we counter the fear? Even the countering the fear with the light, like just being that and embodying these gene keys and loving ourselves, coming back home within and remembering who we are, that the divine beings that we are. So I think this conversation is so relevant, inspiring, and liberating. I mean, the people are just really loving it. So so if you
we no longer need excuses. We no longer need excuses, and we're not qualified to worry.
Yeah.
We don't know the whole thing. And so it just puts us in the space of like, well, if there are no excuses, what do? You create. It leaves and we've only lived from excuse. We've only lived from limitation. So this is massive that's opening up in human consciousness, and it's going to set humanity alight. It's wildfire. Yes. Leave it at that.
Yeah. And I think people are saying that what they're taking away from this conversation is falling in love with themselves and their shadows. So I want to just share, I told Murry when we kind of put this out that he was going to get a tremendous response, and this is just the beginning, and he's not really prepared to facilitate lots of sessions. So I put up a link. If anyone is interested in a session, I started a little mailing list with him where we can just gather your names and then send out a way to get in touch with Murry and to book a session so he doesn't get in complete overwhelm with the response and the love that's going to come his way, because he's opening to receiving more. So I'm going to put that link in here one more time, and I'll reach out with anyone that wants to be in touch with you, Murry. But we'll definitely be having future conversations for sure, not just between ourselves, but that sharing with the world, because I think these are the conversations that are needed for these times more than ever.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. How can we look at the collective shadow if we're not aware of our own and what it's actually trying to show us? I think it's really profound, like where we're at and what you can help people to see. I really appreciate our relationship, and and how, having you in my life, I feel like is a gift. And so I just want to say thanks for that, brother. And looking forward to having you all to ourselves, and we'll bring you out into the public now and then to teach people.
And we can't wait to visit
Well,
you
don't
in
you-
South Africa. Yeah.
Yes,
Murray.
please, all come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love you
Take
lots.
care. Love you too.
Thank you for
so much,
everything.
Murray. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Yay, brother.
Lots
Thank
of
you,
love.
everyone, for coming along. Lots of love.